it really, really changed the way I use my phone, like, to this day. We would film like every 3 days and then have like 2 or 3 days of like isolation. So it was really challenging.
And you would not be able to leave your room?
Mm-mm.
So you're in isolation from sun up to sundown.
Mm-hmm. My friends and family like make fun of me because I will let my phone die and I won't have it for like 24, 48 hours and I don't need it. And people are like, why is your phone dead? I can't get a hold of you.
Yeah.
I'm like, you don't need to have access to me 24/7 and vice versa. I think that it made me realize like, I don't have to respond to somebody just because they texted me.
Yeah.
And if they take offense to that, that's on them. Like, I know I'm not doing anything, but I don't want to be on my phone. That intense isolation was kind of a form of meditation and self-discovery. It like really forced me to be deep in my thoughts and be comfortable being bored and be comfortable being alone.
I 1000% agree. Like all my life goes through this phone. And so I'm always attached to that. But then I find myself like constantly picking it up. When you break from this, like it's so addictive. Like, and this will have you running an autopilot. And so I think you connect with your deeper self when you can isolate from that.
It's funny because now looking back, I'm like, wow, I just truly love who I am so much. And I think that if I didn't go through that, I wouldn't be who I am or have been able to go through some of the things I've been through in the last 2 years.
Welcome, everyone, to the Beyond the Cover podcast. My intent with creating this podcast was to provide a platform where men can speak openly about their journeys with mental health without fear of judgment while doing so. While I, the host, or you, the listener, may not agree with everything or anything that a certain guest says for that matter, my focus is not to decipher what is right or wrong. Rather, it's to gain a better understanding of why somebody thinks and acts the way that they do. And with this understanding, we will begin to make better sense of our own lives and the world around us. So join me as we open the books into these men's journeys and dissect the pages within. Anna Burns, welcome to Beyond the Cover.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I always am excited to talk to another reality TV contestant.
Yeah.
Because it's unspoken sometimes, but we just understand what we've likely been through. Even though we haven't been through a similar show or the same exact show, I feel that reality television, at least from what I've heard and talking with people that have been on shows that aren't in the Bachelor world for me, that there's a lot of commonality, whether it's their interaction with producers, whether it's, the way that they were perceived on TV, whether, the blowback they faced from people. There seems to be, no matter the show, common themes.
Yeah. It's definitely a unique experience.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it forever changes really everyone that goes on TV, for better or for worse. So I want to dive in with you on that, and we'll talk about you were a contestant on the 2024 season of The Mole.
Correct.
So this came out this year.
It did,
and by the time we air this, I guess it'll be next year. But you're fresh off reality TV.
Yes, brand new.
Okay.
Yeah. Which is crazy because like we filmed it a year and a half ago. It feels like it's been forever.
Yeah.
But like for everyone else, it's only been like a few months.
Okay, so you filmed it a year and a half ago.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's quite a amount of time, like downtime from filming to airing. How is that experience? And I asked this because when I was on The Bachelorette and Bachelor, I filmed The Bachelorette. I went back and filmed The Bachelor a month after I finished my filming with The Bachelorette.
Wow. Okay.
And then the show, The Bachelorette, when I came off after 2 months filming The Bachelor, the season of The Bachelorette started airing. So basically, the second I came off of filming, I was already watching myself on TV.
Yeah.
And then once The Bachelorette ended, The Bachelor film, it airs right after. So
yeah,
I
that's really quick turnover.
I went from filming to watching like at the same point.
Yeah.
And it was a lot. I think I couldn't process it all in that moment. But how is it to wait a year and a half? I mean, was that odd? Would you have liked the time to have been a quicker turnaround time? Or are you happy that there was a year and a half delay?
Yeah, I think that at the time while I was waiting, I was very anxious and I really wanted it to air and just get it all out there. But now that I'm at where I'm at in my life, I think I'm extremely grateful that it was a year and a half later. I was 23 when I filmed the show. I'm 25 now. And the growth that I've done in 2 years has been like astronomical. So
Mhm.
I don't think that mentally I would have been prepared for the publicity had I not been in the place that I am now. So I think if, you know, in your situation where it's like back to back like that and the turnaround is like a couple months,
Yeah.
I don't think that I would have been able to handle it with grace. And
Mhm.
my character on the mole, obviously it's reality television, but we all know how like things get like a little twisty.
There's role players. I mean, in
Yeah.
every show, there was a villain on every season that I
Yeah.
was on. There's, you know, the one that everyone roots for, the sweetheart. I mean, there's
Yeah.
just these natural roles that people
Yeah.
either choose to fall into or naturally.
Well, yeah. And
fall
then the
into.
edit too, like everyone has a villainous side, everyone
Mhm.
has a sweetheart side. And so however they edit it, if they only get your bad moments,
Yeah.
it's unfortunate, but it is what it is.
Because now you're the villain and people assume that that's the way that you walk around on a daily basis.
Yes. And you're like, yeah, that's like part of my personality, but it's not the whole thing. And I
Yeah.
think that they have to understand too that this is 2 months of filming squeezed into 10 hours. So we were filming.
Oh, the show's only 10 hours in total?
Yeah. Yeah.
Is this an hour for every episode?
Yeah, not even. Some of them are only like
Wow.
45 minutes.
Oh,
so
that's just crazy to think 2 months. Yeah. I mean,
yeah. And I think I was an extremely controversial person on my show. So
You were.
yeah.
Okay, I had read about that, and so I was diving into it a little bit. But give me a high level overview, or even just like maybe a 30-second synopsis of like what role you played. So were you the villain?
I would say I have a character arc. So
Okay.
I think in the first 4 episodes, I would definitely probably consider myself the villain, and then I think that kind of like halfway through the show, I switch gears, and then I'm kind of like team player, and then I think people start rooting for me.
So my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I looked into like what is the premise of the mole, and my understanding is that there is one individual that's trying to sabotage everybody else as they're trying to basically complete and win activities, and then they add money to a pot.
Yes.
And so at the end of it, everyone splits it, unless the mole wins and basically sabotages everyone's efforts.
So the winner gets the pot. We didn't split it, unfortunately. So like I'm still poor. Shout out to the winner. I did not win.
So does it come down to just the final 2?
Yeah. So it comes down to the final 2. I was final 3.
Oh, wow.
And then I got out. And then, so I was in all 10 episodes. And then the mole and the final 2 are there. And it's basically like the last quiz is to decide who the winner is.
And how much was the prize money?
I think it ended up being like $150,000.
That's not bad at all. Okay.
Yeah.
So, oh man. So you were down in the final 3. And of course, like does the mole always, I assume, make it to the end, like regardless?
Yes.
So the mole will bring like one other player with them. And at that point, it's the head to head. And then the mole gets no money, I understand, right?
They get paid for being the mole.
Okay, they do.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. Okay. I was wondering that because I looked into it. It was like it was a police officer or somebody.
Yeah. He was an undercover narcotics cop.
And I have to imagine that played to his advantage because he was able to play again, like he was able to be sneaky, but know when to like give, when not to give.
Yeah.
But this is what I was, if I was having a hard time understanding. You weren't the mole, but I read online that like you were sabotaging early on.
Yeah. So
what,
the whole premise of the show and the only way to make it to the end is to figure out who the mole is. The problem is if everyone knows who the mole is, then it's who's getting the most accurate quiz results. So you want to throw people off basically because you don't want them to know who the mole is. So you want to figure out who the mole is while trying to throw everyone else off. Because
there's really no team element.
Yeah. And when everyone's sabotaging, then you're not really sure who it is because you're like, are they sabotaging to try to throw me off or are they sabotaging because they're the mole?
Okay.
And then the mole's able to kind of hide in plain sight because everyone's sabotaging. So it's not going to look weird if they're sabotaging. No one's going to be like, So I figured out who it was, but then so did 2 other people, which is why I got kicked out of the final.
Okay.
The finale. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. So it sounds fun.
It's super fun. Oh my gosh. It was like the best 8 weeks of my life. Yeah.
Okay. So the actual experience itself, you walked out of your first reality TV experience. Yeah. You walk out of your first reality TV experience and you think this is awesome. Is that the way that it stayed as far as like from the time that you filmed to the time that it aired? Or was your outlook ever shaken from that place of like, this was incredible. I love reality television. I would recommend it to everybody.
So to get like really deep for a second, I think there's only a couple experiences in your life that are really going to shape and change who you are, like to your core. And I think like having a child, getting married, losing somebody really close to you, those are all experiences that are really going to change you and force you to grow. And there's not a lot of like experiences in your day-to-day. Like, you're going to face adversity, but losing your job, struggling financially or getting in a fight with a friend, it's not really going to change who you are at your core, like your core values and morals, and like really force you to grow. And I think that reality television definitely does. I think that some people come out of it and they mature and they grow into like a better version of themselves. And then I'm sure there are situations and case scenarios where it's the alternative and it kind of forces them to like regress in a way because they don't have the mental capacity to handle it. And I truly think that I came out of this like, wow, this really shook me.
Yeah.
Being without my friends, my family, my phone. It's different than other reality shows for sure. I wasn't able to have my phone for an hour a day. I know there are some in which that's the case. So I was not able to talk to my family. And in one situation, in the second episode, I was in a mission where I actually ended up passing out, and we had to pause filming, and I wasn't able to call my family or talk to them about it. And it was like being in a foreign country, going through all of this by myself at 23. And I told you I was recovering from an ACL injury. So it was very challenging mentally and physically. And I think that it really, really forced me to grow as a person.
Yeah. Yeah, I do agree with you that reality television will absolutely shake up your life to a place where, growth and being like reborn, in my case, was inevitable. I mean, you can get your ego absolutely crushed. And I wonder, I wonder, did you feel that your ego was ever under attack? Like, did you ever go, man, I'm getting really like defensive right now, and based on what people are saying or the way that the show is like being perceived? And did you ever feel yourself on the attack? And how did you, if so, like, how did you combat that? Because I first went on the defense and tried to tell everyone like, hey, you guys are all misunderstanding. Like, this is why I did this. And then I tried to explain myself away to a place where I thought eventually people would be like, oh, I get it. Okay, cool. You're good. Yeah, we like you. You're not this asshole. But like what happened was I couldn't explain my way out of it. And then people just further got even more angry. And so they attacked me further, and were like, and finally they said like, it's the fact that he won't accept accountability and just say that he hurt people. And that was when it like clicked for me. I mean, my ego finally was like beaten to the pulp where I was like, oh, I just have to say I'm sorry and actually mean that. And it's not even about this point about explaining myself away. Did you ever find yourself in a position where you maybe at first were like, wait, hold up. Like, you all are missing context. There's a lot more here. Or were you able to kind of just like stay kind of cool, calm, and collected? And you're like, yeah, whatever, TV is TV. Like, I have to imagine like something changed. You said it was life changing. So what was so challenging? And was it like having to come to terms with like the fact that your ego was under attack based on the way that you were perceived, or was it something else?
So I am very fortunate that prior to going on my show, I think that I had a very high level of self-awareness and self-worth. And
where did that stem from? Have you always had that?
No, I had an eating disorder in high school. And I think that also forced me to really grow as a person, like really dig deep and get to the root of that issue. Was it because I was insecure? Was it some sort of metaphor for control and my need to control like my body and my life? And so I think that prior to going on the show, I was already in a really good headspace as far as like, I'm aware that I'm putting myself on blast. I'm putting myself in the public eye. You can be the juiciest peach in the world and there's still going to be somebody that doesn't like peaches. Like, it doesn't matter if you are literally an angel. Like, I watch reality television and there will be somebody that's like, oh my God, she's literally the sweetest, best human, woman of God, like everything. And then people will still hate on her. Like it really doesn't matter. You're going to get hate. So I think that when the show came out, I was already well equipped with the tools that I needed to handle just the negative feedback from people. I really didn't take it to heart. And I don't think that ego is necessarily one of my weaknesses. So I am able to take accountability for my actions and things I did on the show that, again, I'm 23 years old. So I think that, or not now, but I was on the show.
Time.
And so I'm like, guys, like, you have to understand that even in the last 2 years, I've done so much growing up. Like, 23 is a child. You really can't take this for what it is and base my whole personality and your whole entire perception or opinion of me on this one moment. It doesn't define who I am.
Yeah.
However, I do see how that could be the wrong way to handle something, you know, and going back, I maybe wouldn't have done it the same way, but
it sounds like you gave yourself permission to be a 23-year-old, and you're just like,
yeah.
hey, I was a 23-year-old on television. I mean, what do you expect out of me? And
in
the
an
last
extreme
2 years,
situation too. You know, I'm in Malaysia. It's 112 degrees with 80% humidity. I'm dehydrated. I'm starving. I'm isolated. You know, I'm doing these extreme mental and physical challenges. We're filming for 10-hour days. It's crazy with people I don't know. Granted, now they're like family to me, but at the time they're strangers.
Yeah.
So it was an extreme situation. And I think that I handled it pretty well, given the circumstances.
Yeah.
But so I try to like live with no regrets and just be like glass half full about it because it was so fun and amazing. But yeah.
Well, it's awesome that you can take that experience and be like, hey, you know what? This made me grow as an individual, as a human being. You know, I saw the way that I was portrayed on TV or however it came across. And it's just like, yeah, I am 23 years old and it was fun. And, you know, I do think that this is something that people need to also understand. If you're in 80% humidity, 110 degrees, 10 hours a day, like in a foreign environment with people you don't know, with no connection to the outside world, can't talk to your loved ones, friends, like you're completely cut off and you're in this environment for the first time on reality television, you got to imagine that you're probably not going to put your best foot forward at all points.
Yeah.
Like you may lash out and get emotional because naturally, like there's that protective mechanism. Like I am in this really, really like unknown, highly unknown environment. And therefore like our walls go up and like our ego steps in and is like, hold up. Like I got to be cautious here and I got to protect myself. Right. Even though it's not a matter of life or death, it's a matter of like, well, again, some people, they're like, hey, reality television can be this catalyst for a lot of things, personal growth, financial growth. I mean, it can bring an abundance of opportunities. Did you ever consider that going into the show? Like I'll be like, I did. Like I went on being like, you know what, I'll just give this a shot. I was in between jobs and I thought, you know, I would like to settle down. I was 28 at the time. And I'm like, hey, I don't think I'm going to find what I'm looking for in Columbia, Missouri. I was in a college town and I was 28. So I was old in that town. And so I was like, I got to get out of here. But I'm like, no, I'm never going to find anybody in Columbia that I'm looking for to settle down with. So maybe if I put myself on reality television, someone will turn on the TV and be like, oh, he's cool.
Maybe I'll find my wife on reality television. It's a crazy thing to say, but okay.
I don't think I had the belief that I would find it on as I went on The Bachelorette first. I was like, I didn't think it was going to actually work. I'm like, I'm one of 30 guys.
Yeah.
So likely the odds are stacked against me. I'm not going to end up with this person. So at the time I was like, well, if I just go on TV, somebody will see me and be like, oh, he's cool. I like him. And they'll DM me and I can like, then I can like meet somebody that lives across the country and then convince them to come to Columbia, Missouri.
Oh, okay.
That's what I thought. And then
them
like,
to come to Columbia.
Yeah, I was like, hey, it's not that bad. We have like, you know, we have a great, you know, college campus with like all like the sports, like football's does well, basketball's doing well.
Yeah.
Great time to be a great place to raise a family. And I was in that headspace of like, I'm 28 and in Missouri, if you're 28 and single, people start being like, what's wrong with you? Like, why haven't you settled down? I mean, I almost got engaged at 23. I mean, I was on that track. So then all of a sudden I'm 28 now and everyone's like, where's your baggage at?
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, I got a little bit.
It's like the total opposite in Scottsdale.
Like
people don't settle down here till they're like 40 years old.
No, yeah.
They're like 40 years old in the club. It's like, bro, go home and like have kids. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah. But like there's enough 40-year-olds are out there that are just like, oh, like, hey, like high five and like, your life's good. There's no rush. Yeah. My mom doesn't like to hear that. I don't think I'll make it to 40. I don't plan on it. But I mean, it's like, but it's a completely different environment. There's so much out here, opportunity, distractions, whether good or bad. And so you just don't feel like you're like, I want to experience all this because eventually like I'm not going to be able to.
Yeah.
My friends that have kids, like they can go out once a month or once every couple months. You got to get a babysitter. They have to orchestrate it all. And it's an effort.
Yeah.
So but that was my the long way of saying that, you know, I went on with pure intentions on The Bachelorette. Well, then like after I went through one time and I saw how things went with The Bachelor, it was like, hey, I think this could work. I mean, 30 women, and I got to imagine one of them I would like. So like, I think this could work.
Yeah.
But also like, what else can this do for my life? I mean, forever change it. So did you consider that at any point, or were you just like, hey, once in a lifetime opportunity, I'm just going to do it for the sake of doing it. I don't really care what else happens.
Yeah, I mean, I knew that the Mole's a smaller show. So I think it was like perfect because I don't necessarily know that I want to be like reality TV famous, but I think having enough of a following to like make a living off of, or at least be like a local influencer is really cool. And that was something I was interested in. So when I went on the show, it was with the intention of winning the money and piecing out. To be honest with you, I thought I was going to win. Like I went in there like, I'm going to win. I saw the competition. I was like, I got this. Like there's like 2 people that could beat me here. They beat me, but
you're like, well, at least I was correct. I
was like, there's maybe like 2 people here that could possibly beat me.
Yeah,
like,
it sucks when you're like, that guy?
Right?
Like,
no.
what? Like, what? How did you do that? Like, no way. But sometimes people surprise you.
Yeah. And so I fully thought that I was going to win the money and that I was just going to like peace out and be like, okay, like I'll just use this to like help start my gym. Like I wanted to own a gym. I was like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to start a gym and then I'm going to like just disappear and be a mom. Like that's what I want to do. You know, I was living in Dallas, Texas at the time. I'm from Scottsdale. I moved to Dallas. And then the day the show ended, I packed up all my stuff and drove all the way back to Scottsdale.
Why?
So I just realized that it's not where I wanted to be and I wanted to go home. And it really did shake me. Like mentally, that was probably my lowest point, was like right when the show was ending. I felt like everything was on pause. I had given up a career in medical marketing for the show. I didn't really know what was next and I was kind of just like lost. And I didn't want to make any like life altering decisions because I wasn't sure where it was going to lead me. So again, like I had just spent like 6 months not being able to work out because my ACL and the surgery and recovery. I was finally able to work out on the show, but only like every 3 days. And so that was really challenging for me because it was like the first time in my life that I couldn't work out. I couldn't talk to anybody. As you know, like I'm a D1 yapper. Like I don't know how to not talk. And I was just sitting in the room, like no music, no TV, just like my books. And I was going insane. Me and a couple of the people were playing like tic-tac-toe on notes and sliding it under each other's doors. We'd like sneak out and slide it under each other's doors. Tic-tac-toe. Because we were like literally that bored. Like we were like, help. Because we would film like every 3 days and then have like 2 or 3 days of like isolation. So it was really challenging.
And you would not be able to leave your room? Like, could you,
at all?
Besides the gym, maybe it sounds like?
Every couple days, yeah.
So you're in isolation from sun up to sundown. Yeah, that would be very challenging.
Yeah.
So for you, you felt like in that time, I mean, it was terrible. I mean, one of the worst, like that isolation, you're like, I would never want to find myself in that position ever again. Or did you?
Yes and no.
Okay.
Yes and no. It's funny because now looking back, I'm like, wow, I just truly love who I am so much. And I owe it to that experience in part. And I think that if I didn't go through that, I wouldn't be who I am or have been able to go through some of the things I've been through in the last 2 years without that. And I think that like that intense isolation was kind of a form of meditation and self-discovery. It like really forced me to be deep in my thoughts and be comfortable being bored and be comfortable being alone. I have friends where like they're literally always doing something. Like if they're not working, they're out and about. They're never at home alone. And I think that it's really powerful to be really comfortable being bored and being alone.
Yeah. I 1000% agree. So there was isolation when I was on The Bachelor. Of course, they couldn't have me running around trying to sneakily meet up with the women. Everything had to be on TV, which makes sense. I don't want to to have some storyline being created on the back end when the cameras are off. So, but with that, and I didn't have my technology. It felt therapeutic in a way because first off, like I grabbed this phone so much, and all my life goes through this phone. I mean, I do sales, so like I get called all the time, whether it's solar, real estate, whether it's podcast sales, whatever. And so I'm always attached to that. But then I find myself like constantly picking it up, like because there's always some notification going off. There's an email, there's a text, there's a notification on my whatever platform, if it's TikTok, if it's Instagram, and so when I was on the show, it basically forced me to slow down. I was super bored at first because I'm like, what the hell do I do?
Yeah.
Like I kept wanting to reach and I'm like, there's nothing there on the
Yeah.
nightstand.
You
Like,
feel like naked too. You're like, I feel like something's missing. Like
Yeah.
I left something.
yeah.
Yeah, it's weird.
Yeah. And so it's an odd feeling, but then you start to be like, I started realizing that like when things slow down, my brain picked up, but then my creativity started to kick in. So I'm like, well, what can I do to stay entertained? I started journaling.
Yeah.
So I started writing down my thoughts and I started uncovering, these things that I had. I was like, maybe I should start focusing on this and dealing with this. Like this is coming up, bubbling up right now because I didn't have anything better to do than think, well, I'd always run my life in autopilot of like, do this and do this and do this and fill my days with tasks. And so I found it to be actually very like helpful to slow me down.
Yeah.
So it's interesting that you say that. I think it's like, it actually can be really powerful where, I would say in the real world, how do you emulate this? Well, I don't know, either like give your phone to a friend who can hide it or take it away from you or set it in, a box. I've heard of boxes that are like, they'll lock for a certain amount of time and then they unlock after like 4 hours. Like you can't do anything to get into it. But I understand some people are like, well, I can't do that with, with I have my work phone or whatever. Okay, well then put in your personal phone and get a work phone, right?
Yeah.
Like there's a way around it.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that there's something to be said about like when you break from this, like it's so addictive.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and this will have you running an autopilot. And so I think you connect with your deeper self when you can isolate from that. Did you notice when you got the phone back, like, did you just like fall back into it? I mean, when you first got your phone back, do you remember that feeling? Was it like a kid in a candy store, like eating your favorite food? I mean, did you feel like this intense draw to it? And did you get like sucked in or did you just kind of fall back into it and not think anything of it?
No.
Okay.
It really, really changed the way I use my phone, like to this day.
Yeah.
So my friends and family like make fun of me because I will let my phone die and I won't have it for like 24, 48 hours and I don't need it.
Yeah.
And like, I just won't even charge it. And people are like, why is your phone dead? I can't get a hold of you.
Yeah.
I'm like, you don't need to have access to me 24/7.
Yeah.
That's another thing. Like I had created this culture with my phone, as I'm sure like everyone can relate to, where you have access to everybody and they have access to you 24/7. If you want to FaceTime them, if you want to text them, you almost get like mad at people if they don't answer because you're like, I know they have their phone.
Like I know what you're doing.
Yeah. Like I know you're sitting on your phone. I can see that you're active on TikTok. Like, like why are you not answering me?
Yeah.
And I think that it made me more aware of people's personal time and like respectful of it and wanting them to have that time. Oh, they just got off work. Like I'm going to give them like a couple hours before I hit them up and vice versa. I think that it made me realize like I don't have to respond to somebody just because they texted me.
Yeah.
And if they take offense to that, that's on them. Like I know I'm not doing anything, but I don't want to be on my phone.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I learned the same thing through my experience. It was before I went on The Bachelorette, I was in medical device sales. So everything felt like an emergency. And that was the way that was portrayed to me by somebody that I worked closely with was you got to be available at all times. And I was on call. So, I mean, sometimes I'd have to go in at 2 a.m. and, and I could never have my phone on silent. For 5 years that I was in medical sales, I was in the trauma division. So like car accidents happened. You got to go in at 2 a.m., 6 p.m. Like I would take pre-workout and I'd have that beta alanine or whatever, that itchiness feeling. And all of a sudden it's like, boom, phone call, got to come into the OR. So I'm in the OR just like, oh, I got this rush and like, my skin is itching.
Yeah.
But that was the way it was. And I didn't have my phone on silent for 5 years. And I remember when people would text me, I'd text back within 30 seconds. I mean, it was like, when you want to text me, boom, Clayton's like right back. Like it's coming right back over. And then when I went on reality television, I came off it. I realized like in the time that I was gone and without my technology that the world didn't explode. Like life moved on. I didn't lose any like business. I didn't lose friendships. And that's when it hit me. I go, there's no real emergencies. And if there are, they'll call me 6 times.
Yeah.
Right. But other than that, like, yeah, I will be on social media and I'll make a post. And for some people around me, they were like, what's going on, man? You used to like always respond. Now it takes 3 days to respond.
Yeah.
I said, yeah, I've changed the way I've approached this. You want to get a hold of me? Like right away, call me. If not, text me. And I see it come through right away. But I look at it, I'm like,
yeah,
I'm on my computer right now. I'm working. So like, I'm not going to break from this nice little workflow I got. And, some people, they got pushed away and they were the wrong people. And the right people are like, hey, Clayton will get back to you. Just, if it's an emergency, call him. If not, then like shoot him a text. And that's worked out really well because I'm respecting my time and energy. And also like by doing that, it's made things easier. So I don't feel like I'm like, I have to answer this.
Yeah.
Like it's been 10 minutes.
And then your answer can be more thoughtful as well, because
Yeah.
you're like in a place where you have time to answer.
Yeah.
And I think that in sales too, there's something called like a pregnancy pause. I'm sure you know about it. You might use a different term, but like if I give you an objection,
Yeah.
you don't answer right away. You just sit there and stay silent and wait for me to give you my real objection instead of like giving you a smoke screen.
Yeah.
And I think that
You mean like if you're face to face?
yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So if you're face
The
to face,
power of
and
silence.
yes,
Yeah.
the
I've
power
never
of
heard it as a
silence.
pregnancy pause, but I never heard that. Do you
Yeah.
know where that comes from? Like what's
I don't know. I just
pregnancy pause?
Yeah.
I guess it's just like
I'm in sales. I've been in sales like forever. And
Yeah.
like I always teach people like their first objection is a smoke screen. They're gonna say like, oh, I need to talk to my wife. And you're like, if you sit there and you're just like,
then
they'll eventually be like, because we just spent a bunch of money and I don't know if she's gonna want and then you're like, okay,
there
so
it is.
the
That's
real
the
objection is the money.
The money.
Right. So
that's a really good point.
I think that with your phone, like not answering somebody right away is, like I said, it just makes the conversation more thoughtful. Like sometimes you're just texting, and even in person, you just say things to fill the silence or fill a lull in the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that you feel like you might need to respond to somebody and you're not having a deep conversation via text, right?
Yeah.
So like then it's like, hey, let me like pick up the phone and call them when I have a second instead of just like responding to this text right now.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you kind of connected the dots with me. It really does. I might take 3 days to text back, but when I do, it's like, okay, I'm ready to go. Like, be thoughtful.
Yeah.
And I'll typically send out an audio message to people like, gosh, damn it, Clayton. Like, you're not going to listen to this for 3 minutes, but that's the way that I feel. I'm like, yeah, I love it or hate it. Like, I actually want to give this a thoughtful response.
Mm-hmm.
If it's just something as simple as like, and I understand again, timing and all that. Hey, are you going to be at the, the office today at 4 o'clock or whatever? And the answer is like, yes. Okay, of course I'm going to respond. That's timely.
Yeah.
But if someone's like, hey, just want to check in with you, see how you're doing. And it's like, okay, like, I could say like, hey, I'm good. How are you? But I'm like, no, like I actually care about this response. So like, let me wait till the weekend. You text me on a Tuesday. I'm super busy. I got a lot of stuff that I got to take care of. And then I'll call you or I'll text you on Saturday. Like, hey, can you talk Sunday? Mm-hmm. Right. And so, it allows you to be more thoughtful. And then like people just adapt. They're like, hey, he's not ignoring me. Like he always gets back. So like he will, and so it's having that it really comes back to self-respect. Yeah. And also, but then that self-respect for me to respect my own time, but then also to respect that individual and say, hey, like we have a good friendship, a good connection. So you'd much rather me be thoughtful in this response anyways.
Yes. And give you an answer where I'm going to remember this conversation. If you ask me a question and I just respond and I'm in the middle of doing 100 things, I'm not going to remember what I just texted you because I just respond to send you a response. Yeah. So then they bring it up and they're like, remember we had dinner? And I'm like, no, I don't remember. I just literally shot your text back and agreed to whatever you said. And I think another thing is about that is just like, some people aren't in a place to have like a legitimate conversation. So if somebody texts you and they say, hey, how are you? Because they're trying to start a conversation. Yeah. I've been really mindful of asking people like, are you in a place to talk right now? Because I actually do have stuff going on. So like, if you want to hear about it, I'll problem dump on you. But but like, I'm like a sponge. Yeah. And so if you're having a bad day and you like dump that all on me, then I'm going to be like, oh my, like, I'm so empathetic. I'll be like, oh my God, Clayton's like going through it, man. Like, this is horrible. And then now it's like affecting my day, So.
Which like selfishly, I think again, I just had this happen recently. I had somebody text me like, hey, can you talk? And I was right in the middle of scrambling. I was doing co-emceeing a mental health event. Yeah. And my co-host had memorized all of her lines. And I was like, oh my gosh, she actually did it. So I'm there the day of and I'm like, I haven't memorized all my lines, but like I now need to because I want to come up, like elevate to her standard. Mm-hmm. Like I don't want to be the one reading off a script while she's memorized her lines. So I start frantically. I'm like, I have 6 hours. So I'm literally like memorizing this it was like, I don't know, it was a lot of lines for me. Yeah. And so like I'm here frantically trying to like memorize the lines, and I get a text from a friend and he's like, hey, can you talk? And I assumed like this must be something important, but I am like, if I say yes, I can open up right now, then like I'm gonna basically now spend, who knows, like maybe he needs to talk about something serious. And so now this might take the next hour or 2 hours because I will give him that time. Yes. Because like I want to be there for my friend. It was hard though, because I ultimately was like, I have to perform. I was getting paid for this performance. And I was like, I have to answer this. If it's really serious, I'm just going to imagine he's going to call me. I regret this. I wish I would have been like, hey, is this like something that, like is really serious? If so, I absolutely will talk to you right now, but Like instead I was like, I don't have this time. And I made an assumption, and that part I felt guilty on. And so I haven't apologized to him, but I will see him soon. And I'm going to say like, hey, just by the way, like, I wish I would have handled that better. But I mean, selfishly, I was like, hey, I also have to take care of like what's in front of me right now. Right. So like, that's where the communication is super important. I should have said, hey, are you okay if I give you a call tomorrow? Cause I'm right in the middle of trying to like recite lines and memorize them to do really well. So I'm really like stressed. So is this something that can wait? The answer is like, if the answer is yes, great, perfect. The answer is like, no, I need you right now. Of course. Because you never know, like that might be your friend texting, like, because they're on their last limb.
Right.
And I've heard of these terrible stories of people like reaching out and somebody was just like, I can't do this right now. And so they don't answer. And that person, I mean, worst case scenario is no longer, with them on this planet. Like, it's just, so it's hard, but
it's
like,
a balance.
It's a balance,
just like
right?
everything.
But that's where the communication is so critical, where it's like having the communication to say like, hey, like just sending that text, like, hey, I would love to like be able to like have this conversation with you right now. Like, is this something that we can hold off until tomorrow?
Or is it like an emergency?
Or is it an emergency?
Yeah.
And that's just like sending that quick message.
Yeah. Because if your brain is preoccupied with something else, like for instance, in your case, you're memorizing lines. So your brain is full. Your brain is full of information right now. And if somebody calls you and they're just, yapping about something and it's not super serious, let's say, and you're going to be thinking about your lines in the back of your head and you're not really going to be absorbing what they're saying at all. So it's kind of like, it is respectful to them. It is a waste of a conversation. And it's respectful to them as a listener to be like, hey, is this something serious? My brain is preoccupied right now. Can this wait like, couple hours? Yeah.
Very, very healthy mindset. And it's awesome that you've, again, like learned that. I think women just progress faster than men in general. So here I am at 31, like learning these things, and you're like, yeah, I'm doing it at 25. But I think like it's impressive nonetheless, like that to have that. And I'm sure like you probably see that you have a lot of healthy relationships in your life because like you receive what you give, which I've noticed as well. Like what has happened to me, my circle has changed, and it's like now there's this respect where people don't be like, what's the deal, man? It's been 2 days. And like, it's like the people that had an issue with me not taking 2 days to respond never asked me why. Yeah. I was taking 2 days to respond. And like people on the weekends now know, like, don't if you text Clayton on the weekend, you're getting a response Sunday night. Like, cause that's what when I go to my weekends, I'm like, I need time to decompress and I'm spending time with the people I care about.
Yeah.
Therefore, like when I'm with you, I'm not like looking at my phone.
Yeah.
It's like, I mean, I do that when I'm at dinner. I'm like, I don't look. If I'm out during the week, and I see something like, I'm like, okay, I'm not going to answer it. Like I'll look at it. But if I'm on the weekend, I'm like, again, like I want to be fully present. Right. And so this damn phone does everything in its power to make you not present.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think your phone ever brings you into a place of presence.
No.
Like it does everything beside that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. And I think that just, even you at 31, being able to understand all of that is still definitely more mature than other 31-year-old men I've met and women, right? Like I think that gender and age is not an indicator of your maturity emotionally or otherwise. But I will say it wasn't always the case for me that I had healthy relationships in my life. And I definitely think that is something that has changed over the last year and a half as well. And I don't know that that's due to the show or just the fact that my frontal lobe developed this year or like.
So there's not one single point that you can say this was that turning point. Like you feel it was just a steady progression. Steady progression
over the last year and a half. Yeah. I would say before the show, it's not that I didn't care about my relationships. I just don't think I knew how. I was just very selfish and not intentionally, just like self-absorbed and just kind of worried about my problems. I didn't really have the capacity to handle my own issues. So I wasn't in a place to where I could help others with theirs.
Yeah.
And I think it made me a really bad listener and a bad friend. And it wasn't intentional. I cared about the people in my life so much. I just didn't know how to be there for them and also go through what I was going through.
So how did you find that balance? And with that, do you feel that being selfish is always a bad thing?
No.
Okay.
I would still consider myself pretty selfish.
And I am as well. So what did you do to find the balance then? If you felt that you couldn't be there to help others, what did you do to remedy the situation where you're now able to be there for them?
I think a couple of things. One, making my circle smaller. You don't have to be everyone's best friend.
I agree with that 100%.
Yeah.
Gosh, like that is That rings so true.
Yeah.
I used to try to like get everyone to like me, and it was exhausting.
It's exhausting.
I'm like, I have to like check in on this person. Oh my gosh, I haven't talked to this person in 2 weeks.
And it makes you a bad friend because I can only hang out like 3 days a week. Sorry, my social battery is like, it's like this, it's this. So if I'm hanging out with somebody 3 days a week, I can hang out with anybody else. And now my other friends haven't seen me in a month. And it's like, I only have 3 hours a week because I'm working and I have, puppies and I have family in town. And so I think that making my circle smaller and knowing that like not everyone has to be my best friend. That's okay. And as an adult, you should understand that if people are distant, it's not because they don't love you or care about you or because they want to be distant. It's because they're selfish too. And they have they're the main character of their story and they have their own lives going on. And that's going to take precedent over anything going on in your life or when you want to hang out and your schedule. As an adult, schedules don't always align. And so I might not be able to be on my phone while you're on your phone. I might not be able to go out to dinner when you're able to go out to dinner. And that's totally okay. Like, it doesn't mean that we're not friends. It doesn't mean I don't care about you. It just means that in your adult life, you can't have 10 best friends, and be great friends to all 10 of them.
Yeah, I think there's this misconception or like the brain tries to, especially, I mean, if you have a people-pleasing nature in you or you're just like, of course, why wouldn't I want more friends? Like naturally you would think that the more friends I have, the happier I am. But I actually found that the more friends I tried to maintain having, that it was a balancing act. And one that I was like, I haven't seen so-and-so in 2 months, but this weekend I already have plans to hang out with this person. And the next weekend I'm out of town. And the following weekend I have plans with this person. And so I haven't even seen this person, but I can't see them because I'm going back home after this. And it was like, now I feel rushed. And then
you feel guilty.
I feel guilty. So then I'm like, okay, well, maybe I'll try to see him during the week. But then I'm like, okay, but no, I got to get like my work done. And then I start going, well, okay, so what's more important, this person or my work? And so then I start feeling more guilty because I'm like, obviously like it's now like I'm placing my work over them. But then I'm like, but I have to put food on the table. I got to make money. And like, I want to work 5 days a week. And then I spend the weekends. Like this is the balance that I want, but I can't hang out with all of my friends in just one weekend. Well, then I would start trying to like go have group gatherings. Okay, how about, hey everybody, I'm going hiking on this day. So like, can you come? And if they couldn't come, I was like, all right, great. So that's on you then. Like I tried to like hang out with you. But like I ultimately found recently that, as I've come to this place of self-love and self-confidence, I'm like, I don't even care about approval from all these other people. And again, naturally the people that like I will just naturally gravitate towards making time to the people I want to. And if I don't go out of my way to spend time with you, it's not that I don't like you. It's not that like I don't think you're cool. It's just that like I have a few select relationships in my life that I currently am attending to because those are the ones that refuel me. And it's not that you can't, it's that I've chosen to prioritize them. And you can stay over here and you can still spin in my circle with me as long as you don't take offense to that. Right. Like, and I don't take offense to that either. Like I've been trying to reach out to this one guy since I've come out here. He's very well connected. He's very successful. I feel like just being in the guy's presence, I'm like, I could learn a lot from him. And you know what? Whenever I shoot him a message, like he responds every so often, but he also has gotten to a place now where I think at one point he saw like there was some value that he could pull from me. And so naturally there's this give and take. Like, what am I getting from this person? What are they getting from me? Right. I think there's this mutual pull. And when it feels like, well, I'm giving, but I'm not receiving, then you just kind of push those people away. And at first I was like, oh, I guess I'm not, seen as valuable enough in this guy's eyes. And the reality is like, right. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. But that doesn't mean I have less value as a human. It just means that right now he has his circle and I don't fit in that circle. He's giving the time and energy to them. And you know what? And so maybe one day our paths will cross. And I guarantee you, if our paths cross, he'd be super, super social, 100%. Nice guy. And I'm sure we'd have a great interaction. But he's like, right now, it's like, he's like, hey, like, I don't see the value in us and hanging out. And that doesn't mean you're not valuable. That's the part where like my brain had to understand of like, I have all the value in the world, right? To me and to my loved ones. And either people are going to see that same value or they're not. And I'm not going to try to convince you of my value. I used to try that. Now I'm like, forget it. Not doing it.
No, I literally love that. That's the next thing I was going to say is just like, there are some people that like fill your cup and there are others that feel like they may empty it and not even in a negative way. Like it could be that they're filling other people's cups, but just not mine. Like our energies just aren't on the same wavelength. And so they're energy takers for me and not energy givers. but that doesn't mean that like they're only energy takers to other people. You know, it's just like the way that we interact and the way that our energies align. And like you said, at this point in time, what is the value that I'm bringing? What is the value that you're bringing? And I love having relationships where I'm the giver, right? Because naturally I think I'm such a giver, but that also drains you. It depletes you. And so it's just not sustainable if those are the only relationships you're having in your life, especially romantically. Like I think that my mom always told me that is, are they providing for you like spiritually, financially, emotionally, physically? Where are they adding value in your life? And they need to be at least adding value in like 2 of those areas, right? And if they're not, and you're doing like carrying majority of the load for all of that, then maybe they're not the right person for you. It doesn't mean that they're not an amazing person or they're not the right person for somebody else. It's just where you guys are and your energies and how you guys intermix and interact. It just may not be equal. And I don't think that every relationship needs to be equal all the time, but it needs to be balanced. And so I think that there were a lot of relationships in my life, people I loved that are amazing people, but like you said, they just weren't necessarily adding value. And I felt depleted always hanging out with them because I felt like it took so much more than it gave. And it's not necessarily a bad thing to distance yourselves from those people. And that's where I think kind of the conversation that we started is selfishness always a negative thing? And it's not. Because it gets to a point where I'm not going to be the best version of myself if I'm not a little bit selfish.
You can't pour from an empty cup.
No.
So I think if from a selfish standpoint, I feel when I acquire an abundance, whatever that is, that could be an abundance of money, abundance of opportunity, abundance of just overall energy. Like when I am like bouncing off the walls, I give that back. When I have an abundance of finances, I take people out for dinners. I swipe the card and I'm like, don't worry about it. Like, I got you this round. Like, I'm not keeping tabs. Like the friends that I have now, we go out and we swipe cards. We don't even like, hey, I got it. You got the last one. Oh, don't worry about it. I'm going to get this one too. It's like, I'm not like, oh, hey, you owe me like in the last 5 hangouts, like you've spent 800 on me and I've spent 500. So like, I owe you 300. It's like, I'm not keeping those tabs. You were kind of like, you were touching on it. And I really just want to like, narrow in here because I think some people face this. I face this in my life where it's like, well, how do I know if I'm around the right people? So how do you discern whether or not you're like you have the right people in your corner? Is it like how do you go about figuring that out? So you were kind of saying like you were kind of touching on it, but is it a feeling like for someone that's like, hey, I feel how do I figure out if I'm like around the wrong people? Like what should I look for? What should I think about or what should I observe?
I think that is going to look different for everyone. So for me and what I'm looking for in my life right now is just people who push me to grow and be better, that challenge me in some sort of way. And that might be physically. Like I have friends that it's like, these are my gym friends, right? Because like we go to the gym and like they really push me and that's the only way I'm going to get better. Then I have friends where it's emotionally, where every conversation we have is deep. And, I don't want every single conversation I have in my life to be deep, but I do need some of that, right? Because it forces me to grow. And then I have friends where we have a little bit more shallow conversations, but sometimes that's necessary, right? Like sometimes I've had a really long day or I'm going through something pretty heavy and I already have God to talk to about this, my therapist and my deep friends. And sometimes I just want a friend where we can just like laugh for a minute. And so for me, I get something different from everybody in my life right now. And I think that as long as they're pushing you to grow in some sort of way, that's how you know. For other people that aren't looking to grow, they might not be ready for that, so then that's okay.
What I kind of came to this conclusion or feeling was I know that I have the right people around me when they cause me to feel more. More energized, more loved, more driven. I realize like when I have a conversation with somebody and I leave that conversation ready to run through a wall, ready to take on the world, just rejuvenated. It's that feeling of more that has really helped me simplify it to where I say, okay, it's not that I have to go into every conversation and feel more loved or feel more energized, but I want to feel that more of something positive. Obviously I wouldn't want to have more anxiety, right? Like,
Yeah.
so it needs, so when I say more, feeling more positive,
Yeah.
I guess would be the route that I go about discerning, like, is this person right for me in my life right now or not? Right? Do they fill the cup? And if the answer is no, they're exhausting my resources. They're causing me to pour out more than what I'm taking back in. Then like they're out.
Yeah.
And there's no love lost. It's just like, it's a feeling. And I've even found that it's interesting, like in the dating world. I used to feel that I had to give an explanation for like why things wouldn't work out or why they aren't. But now, I mean, I really feel that it's as simple as saying like, hey, I just don't feel the synergies there.
Yeah.
And it kind of, at points, I almost felt like it was a cop out because I'm like, this is such a blanket statement. But the reality was, I was like, no, this is actually very specific. When it comes down to it, like the synergy between you and I is just not there. And that's it. And I've also received that comment from a woman before, actually multiple. And I'm like, how do you argue that? You don't. Yeah. And also it's kind of nice because I'm like, it's a nice way of like letting someone down nicely. It's like the synergy is just not there.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, if you don't feel it, you just don't feel it. And yeah, there might be something deeper there. They're like, hey, honestly, like I just watched you, I came over to your house and I saw how dirty you are. And you sleep in, like I stayed the night.
But if they were the right person, you can overlook those things. So it's really not an excuse. Cause like, it might be like, there's like 5 things about this person I don't like about them. But if they were like perfect for you in every other way, you would overlook that.
Yeah. And there's no perfect person, but I do think that you find the perfect for me individual.
Yeah.
And that's where, a lot of these things that they do though, you laugh it off. I find that when like, they do something that someone else might find annoying, I find it, to be cute or whatever
charming,
it is.
Yeah.
I could think of like one of my exes, I'm trying to think of something like, there was like, a few things come flooded to my mind. Like, there was like, they wore like their shoes in the house and they were like walking around. I'm like, well, you're not gonna take your shoes off. Like you're dirtying up the floor, and that would have probably bothered me with most people. But then that individual was just like, oh, like, and like was jumping around in the house. Like, what are you gonna do?
Yeah.
And I remember just being like, all right, like, I was like, that's kind of funny.
You'll let it go.
Because what was this, their sense of humor that I loved so much that I was like, I can look past this, right?
Yeah.
I was like, if it's somebody that I already didn't like and they stepped in my house and then I was like, hey, can you take your shoes off? Like, no, I'm gonna keep them on. And you'd be like, this is pissing me off. But there's obviously something else there. So it's like, what are you going to look past? And it's like, okay, obviously you look past the things if somebody possesses these greater qualities that you're like, I love this about them. They're perfect for me. They're not perfect. Yeah. But like these things give them a lot of like, runway to like get away with some stuff.
Yes.
And that's where I think it's like, that's what, of course, like the person that I end up with, it's like, they're going to do some stuff that I'm like, I'm grateful that like you're so funny and you're so driven and like you're so beautiful and you're so all these things because like.
But you chew weird.
That's it. Yeah, but like you chew with your mouth open or whatever.
Oh no, I don't know if I could overlook that one.
All right, well,
that would be like that
one. Yeah, well then I'll never go out to eat with you because I don't think.
You don't chew with your mouth closed.
I think I have to like focus some days.
Okay, yeah.
Because
that's okay.
I grew up with 2 younger brothers. So I've always had ex-girlfriends that said like, they right away within like the first week or 2, they're like, you don't have any sisters, do you? I'm like, no, why? No. They're like, just observation.
Yeah, it's telling.
Yeah. I think I've gotten better now because first off, I dated 30 women on TV. So I also like, and then I had
oh my gosh, I can't even imagine. I need to watch your season.
Audience. You shouldn't. But then I had a primarily female audience that also like watched the show. And so I started getting a ton of feedback from women. And I was like, all right, now you're all helping me.
Yeah.
Like the next one is going to be so grateful. And they'd be like, hey, thank you.
You're well trained now.
Thank you, millions of women.
Yeah. Thank you, millions of women.
I beat them to a pulp.
Yeah, I think that you nailed it on the head though. Like, you know what's so funny? I recently saw Reiki. And do you know what that is?
Is that like a hypnotist or like some type of...
So they read energy.
Okay.
So it's not like a psychic. A lot of people think it's like a psychic or some sort of like therapist or some sort of like witch.
Okay.
They just read energy. And you should go. You would absolutely love it.
I'd be all for it. I know some people be like, that sounds witchy, but
okay, listen,
I'm all for that.
Like I'm a Christian. I was like very hesitant.
Okay.
But I went, and I will say it was very eye-opening. And there are things about me that I don't think, well, not that I don't think, I know that there would be no way for her to know that she was able to pick up from my energy. And what's interesting is even about like my knee, like I told you about my knee, she was like, do you have an injury in your right knee? And I was like,
that'd be weird.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like, how would you know that? It's not on my Instagram. It's not anywhere public.
Yeah.
She's like, I'm just getting a lot of like heat from your right knee. Like you have an injury. And I'm like, yeah, I tore my ACL. I just got surgery last year. It's very weird.
Yeah.
But what was really eye-opening for me was just the way that energy is so real, whether you want to believe it or not. And however you perceive that, you know, like some people think about it a little bit deeper than others, but it is real, right? Energy. And I think that when you said like, there's something in between us, like you can't really describe it with words, but it's just like a feeling that the energy is just not there. Mm-hmm. And I think that that's another thing about when you choose who's in your circle and romantic partners, especially, because that's probably one of the most important decisions you'll ever make in your life is like, who's going to be my life partner?
Yeah.
I think that it's how your body reacts to their energy. Mm-hmm. And I think that that's everything too. So when you're picking who's in your circle, like, how do they make me feel? What's the energy between us?
Yeah.
I think it's really important.
I think there's something to be said about, I think women are better feelers in general. And this is where like you hear the whole women are more emotional, men are more rational. But I think that also that belief plays to men's their detriment, because also men are, you know, at least the way I was, you know, the environments I grew up in. And I think just back, not even to say my environment. I mean, it's not like Eureka, Missouri was this like, it was an incredible place. It was an awesome hometown to grow up in. And I had a conversation with someone recently. They're like, you know, you keep talking about how the environment you're raised in, like, and it kind of like, you know, hurts us. Like we grew up in that environment too. Like you're trashing our hometown. And I was like, no, I'm not trashing the hometown. I'm just, I need to be more careful with my words. So I was like, okay, you know, I think the era that, you know, I was raised in and men, it was all about like men in movies were Terminators and football players and these macho, super muscular men that like just bullied their way through everything and like didn't show any type of emotion. They didn't cry. And if they cried, they were like the manly tears, you know, not like the whimpering. It was just like, you know, one little tear down their face. And it's like, oh, it's badass. And so like, I think men were just taught to suppress and not to feel. And I think that's why also too, I think a lot of men struggle with forming like strong connections with other men, because it's like the missing piece is the feeling.
Yeah.
I cry with my friends now. I laugh with them. I have deep conversations. I was just on the phone earlier with my buddy, and I was like, hey, I just came out of an EMDR therapy session. And I bawled my eyes out. And I tell him that, and he's like, appreciate you sharing that. He's like, well, since you shared something pretty, sensitive, I wanted to share with you. I'm kind of struggling right now. I just had, you know, a girl that just called me and told me that like she's got to cut, you know, things off between us because she feels that she's not over her ex. And then we had this 30-minute conversation.
Yeah.
And it was like, I opened the door, so he opened the door, and boom, and it's like, I get off what I need off my chest. He gets off what he needs. And it's like, he's like, dude, that felt really good, man. Thanks. And it's like, because we're giving ourselves permission to feel.
Yeah.
And I think more men need to do that. But I think also just everyone in general, it's like, we're so concerned about if I open up and just let you know what I'm dealing with, that like, it's going to make me seem weak. It's going to make me seem like I'm, you know, dependent, needy, whatever it is. And it's like, no, but like, there's a reason why you're wanting to get this out. You just have to find the right people to get it out to. It's like, not everyone is, you know, the right person to share a sob story with. Right. But like when you share it and they're like, yeah, no, I feel terrible for you. Yeah, absolutely. And you're like, you're not listening to me. It's like, okay, then that's the person that I'm not going to ever, you've shown me you're never the person that I'm going to share this with. Doesn't mean you can't be in my life, but like the ones that are like, hold on, like, let me silence this. Like, okay, go ahead.
Yeah.
Right. Like, and that's just like, that's through observation and being present in the moment and feeling that moment for what it is. And that's where energy is extremely real. And people will push it away and say it's woo woo and that's so Hollywood. And that's, you know, like, that's so stupid until it's not. Because the reality is like, it's dumb until it's not.
Yeah.
Until you finally choose to say, wait, this actually might be a thing. And now you're manifesting it. Now it becomes a reality. And it's, energy transfer is extremely real. I'm all about like, I'm like, I'm Mr. Woo Woo now. Like I do all that stuff. Yeah. I'm
me too. But I love that you're doing that with your platform too, because I think that that's the difference. Like we have this like term in today's society, like toxic masculinity.
Yeah.
And I think that masculinity should be taught. And I think that it's so important for gender roles in our society. However, I think that when it becomes toxic is because men don't necessarily have the tools necessary because they grew up with like the military dad era and like the dads that, like you said, like Terminator, football, like don't show your emotions. And so they're unable to have like these deep conversations. I think that, and then people think that maybe being vulnerable is not masculine, but I disagree with that. I think maybe being emotionally dependent on your woman isn't very masculine, but I think being emotionally vulnerable is extremely masculine. And I think it's attractive for women. I think that when you have a man that's able to express his emotions and communicate properly, it's like, wow, I can really learn from you. And that's what women want, right? You want a man that you feel like you can learn from, pushes you to grow. That's masculine. So it's interesting.
That balance, though, I mean, you just said that so eloquently, and I totally agree. Like, a woman may want an emotionally available man, but not an emotionally dependent one. And like, this is where I'm in a men's group now. And that's the whole sole purpose of the men's group is like, hey, bring your problems to us. Right. Let us help you heal through this, and then go back with strength and share that feeling of strength with your significant other. Because if you're always going to your significant other with like, I'm really struggling and I need you. I need you to come up with a solution. Now you're pressuring them to come up with something. Now they're like, oh my gosh, like I'm the one supporting. I have to take on this problem. Yeah, I'm supporting this family. I'm the one keeping this thing rolling. And it's like, that's a lot of pressure on them, right? And like, I think like, you know, women want to look to a man and be like, I feel so safe with him, right? Like safe physically, safe financially, safe spiritually, emotionally, like that's what they want. And so I had to learn that, where it's like, I can't bring all my problems to one person. Like, this is where there's an importance of finding like the right people for every scenario. So if I'm struggling with, with certain feelings that a man feels, let me go talk to another man, right? Like, and let me heal with these men so that I don't have to bring this to somebody. Because again, like to your point, when you bring it to them now, if I'm always bringing you something, it's like every day I have to be your rock. And what happens when I need someone to be my rock? Well, and I did this with my ex-girlfriend. Like, I brought all my problems to her on a daily basis because I was like, you're the only one that understands what I went through. Right. Like, you're my person. I want to share this with you. So she was like being that sturdy, person for me. And then like whenever she needed it, I couldn't give it to her.
And it's also like what we talked about, where it's like emotional drainage versus like they're filling my cup versus emptying it, right? And if you're constantly feeling like I'm just pouring out to this person because they need me, and so it's draining my energy, and now I have nothing left to give to them. I can't pour from an empty cup. So I think with what you said, like if you're in a relationship and you want to be emotionally vulnerable, just be mindful of always presenting them with problems. I think that it's really healthy to go into it as a woman or a man, like either or, being like, hey babe, like I really want to tell you about my day. This happened, this happened, this happened. I kind of have some solutions in mind and I want to like your opinion on them. And so I'm either thinking this, or this. How do you think I should handle this? And getting their opinion rather than just like, here's all my problems. And like, you deal with it. You come up with the solutions.
And when they ask, you provide. But if they don't ask for the solution, you just listen. That's right. Because like I've gotten in trouble with many men where like, well, I gave you a solution. It's like, I just wanted to like share what I would, vent. Well, why? Like, are you going to do something about it? It's like, yeah, I will. Right. Like, but the guy's mind is like, well, then what are you going to do about it? Like, I'm giving you solutions. You're like, I'll figure it out. I'm not asking for you to think for me. I'm just asking for you to lend me an ear so I can just like throw this out there, and likely I'll come to that conclusion or solution. And if I can't, that's when I'll be like, hey, so what do you think? Right. So like in men, we always want to jump in and be like, well, I got it. Here's the solution. Right. Like, so again, it's that communication and like being like, okay, in the pregnancy pause, when someone says something, to not be like, okay, well, here's your problem. Like, it's like, whoa. I'm not, it's giving that second for them to be like, are you done yet? And then they'll go like, and also too, like when you give them that second, like, and you give them that look of like, is there something else you want to say? Like, people feel that energy. And then they're like, so with that, like here, and then they go down another path. And it's like, that's where it's like, just give them that moment. Cause like, and then again, eventually they'll be like, I found this when I can bite my lip, bite my tongue. Cause I am, I have a little bit of ADHD. So I always like want to answer stuff.
Me too.
But like when you really just bite your lip, eventually they'll be like, all right. So that's what everything I wanted to say. So what do you think? And it's like, okay, cool. Now they're like, I don't want to say anything else. Like, I got everything off my chest. Now I'm giving you permission to like respond. And that's the healthy dynamic, is like, hey, attentive listening is just as impactful as like actively speaking, right? Like, it's like, there's the balance. Everyone wants to hear their voice be heard, but it's also like, we also have to be just as good at listening as we are speaking, if not better. So, and this world wants to be all about like yapping about like what I've done,
Yes.
you know, and not like, hey, and like that's everyone's great. Everyone's a professional yapper. Like everyone's great at yapping. There are very few good attentive listeners
Yeah.
that I've found. So
I agree. I think, like to your point, both things that you said, I want to touch on. Like the first thing is about providing a solution. It's so funny that you bring that up because I had a conversation with my sister the other day and she was going off about this issue in her relationship. And my only response was, I'm assuming you already have a solution. So what is it? And then she was like, and then I think it makes you come up with your own solution, right?
Yeah.
Because you know, like everyone knows the answer.
Yeah.
You just either don't want to do it or you want to be in the right, even though you're in the wrong, or you don't want to meet them halfway. Like, so, and then she was like, yeah, so I think I should do this. Like, and I'm like, yeah, you should.
Yeah.
So you already knew, you already like had an answer to fix your problem. You just wanted to like vent about your problem, which everyone needs to do sometimes. The second thing you said about being a good listener, I think that has also been something that has changed my life is like, I'm a very good talker and I talk a lot. And I think the first step is like coming out of high school was being like, okay, I'm only going to talk about myself now, right? Because in high school, like, you know, you're around a bunch of girls and everyone's gossipy and you're catty and you're talking about other people. And I think right out of high school, I was like, I really don't like this. Like, I have nothing negative to say about anybody. Like, I just want to talk about me.
Yeah.
So then I only talk about myself.
Yeah.
And then it got to a point where it's like, okay, like I've unlocked that. Now I want to be a good listener. Like now I'm only talking about me, but I need to be mindful of what I'm saying and my verbiage. And am I being positive or negative, even about myself? And am I listening more than I'm talking? And I think being a good listener has also just educated me more than school ever could because I've learned so much from the people around me.
Yeah. I think it's a maturation process of we like speaking. Everyone's like, oh, like, you know, find yourself, speak up. What do you like to do? And so again, our parents kind of like they're really great question askers. They're asking their kids, they're like, oh, speak up. We're like, yeah, like, you know, like my parents would have us order our meals when we go out to the restaurant. And it was like encouraging your kid to speak up and blossom into who they are and show the world what they're capable of. I think that's the first process, you know, the first stage of maturation. And then it's like, okay, now that I've gotten really good at expressing myself, now I want to get really good at the listening aspect because that's where the most growth is going to come from now. And then I think the ultimate place is like, okay, now I've become an extremely good listener. Now it's the discernment of, you know, that third stage of like the discernment between when I should listen and when I should speak.
Yes.
And that's like, I don't know if that's the final stage, but I find that to be an ongoing battle because for me, I'm like, when I think I need to speak, it's like, wait, but if I speak, somebody else may not speak. So I was in a breathwork session recently. The last session I did before this, the one I've done 3 now, the second one, they're like, anyone want to speak up? And I was like, I'll take the lead. So I jump out and I'm like, yeah. So what I experienced was this. And this time on the third time, I was like, I had something to say. But I had this internal thought battle of like, don't say anything. I felt this feeling of don't speak first because somebody else in this room may speak up for the first time. And for them, this is going to be a pivotal moment in their life where they're like, I was the first one to take the lead.
Yeah.
And like, they need this moment more than I need to be, you know, to have my voice be heard first.
Right.
And so I bit my lip and I didn't say anything and I didn't even share at all. And I could have, and I did when my buddy came up to me, he's like, what did you learn from today? And I was like, cool. So then I told him what I felt, but I just was like, I'm biting my lip because for somebody else right now, this moment's more important that like they're the first to speak than me. And it was just cool. It was like that evolution of like, I don't have to be heard, right? Like I used to want to be seen and heard and validated. And now I'm in a place where I'm like, I don't need that. Like I get it. And the people, if they want to know, they'll ask me. Right. So now like if I'm really great at listening, those people will naturally be like, so what about you?
Yeah.
Right. But if I'm always speaking, they're not going to be like, so what about you? They're like, I don't have to say, so what about you? You're always speaking.
That's
so it's
true.
cool to see like that progression.
Yeah.
And you just, I've been honestly very, very, very impressed. This conversation has flowed so seamlessly. And like, I had a whole topic that I was thinking that we would go down. But I really just enjoyed like this natural flow.
Me too.
I really felt that like we were very much just synergistic with like the flow of this. And like, that's when I find that happening. That's what I love about the podcast is like, you know, I typically there's already some synergy. That's why I'm asking someone to come on my podcast in the first place. But I find it to be very beautiful when it's like, I have a direction and then it completely veers off. So with that being said, like, we're definitely going to have a second
Okay,
interview
yeah,
at a
I
later
would love
point.
to.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because there's more that I wanted to dive into to figure out, who you are as a person. But what's next? So like you didn't win the prize money.
No.
So I mean, is reality television still on the table? Like, is that still an option?
Yeah, I definitely think you guys have not seen the last of me.
Okay.
Yeah, I know, right? Moving forward, I don't know. I think that now I'm in a place in my life where I think reality television can be similar to like your phone, and it kind of pulls you out of the present, right? And it's like a time stop, and you're in this little bubble, and then all of a sudden you come back to real life, and it was like, this was like a fever dream, right? Like, what the heck?
Yeah.
And it has pushed me to grow, and I'm very, very, very thankful for the opportunities and doors it has opened. However, I think that I have a lot of growth to do, like in actual reality. And so, I definitely think you guys might see one more thing, and then maybe I'll like just disappear.
They may see you again. For all those that love to see you on the mole.
Yeah.
That villainous side of Hannah that also has a sweet side that, maybe the next show people will see. And maybe. I know certainly we'll absolutely bump into each other again in Scottsdale. And who knows, maybe our reality TV paths cross.
Yeah, maybe.
Could be a potential possibility. So.
Also, I just want to say, like, I grew up in Scottsdale, and I know a lot of people that are much older than you and your age. And I just want to thank you so much for what you're doing with your platform. I think it's such a unique experience to talk to somebody who is so emotionally intelligent and self-aware. And it really, like, it makes me want to do more growth, seeing where you're at and what you're doing with your platform. I just think it's really cool. I don't know a lot of men in the reality TV world that are doing this with their audience and using it for such a positive thing. So thank you for having me.
Thank you, Hannah. That means a lot. I really do appreciate that. I mean, I can tell it comes from the heart. And I just, it's nice to get external validation every so often, just to be like, okay, what I'm doing is actually making an impact. So thank you for your kind words, and thank you so much for coming on today.
Yeah, thank you for having me.